Well, it is Friday night, and it is 6:30, and that means it's time for Charlie Cat Presents. And I'm your host, Dennis Morrison. Tonight, we're going to be looking at net weights and anchor stones. So if you've ever been an avid fisherman, I'm going to look at some things tonight with you that should be of interest because they are ancient devices used in fishing. I have a few notes prepared for you before I show you what I think is a really unique collection of Indian artifacts. So I'm going to read these notes to you. Let's get right to it, okay? All right. Throughout what would one day become the United States of America, the great land that it is, the native people of ancient days lived off a land plentifully stocked with everything they would need by loving hands of a tender and loving God. The rivers, streams, and lakes teemed with life that helped sustain them, and hence they became expert fishermen. Traces of that ancient occupation lie scattered across the lake shores and riverbanks throughout our state, throughout our country, actually throughout the world. But most people, particularly just collectors, don't even recognize them when they see them, or they misidentify them. Here in Michigan, with few exceptions, the sites that I've worked on over the years have been close to waterways. The Osawa River, Vanetton Creek, the Saginaw River, Tittabawassee, Shiawassee, Cass River. The sites have all been near water sources. And on these sites, one of the most widely found stone artifacts I've encountered have been the net weights, or sinkers. The term net weight is used frequently to describe any grooved, notched, or perforated stone artifact that could be considered to have been attached to some kind of cordage, you see. And the weights, the nets, or the net sinker or weights, were used to hold the nets or fishing lines down to prevent them from tangling. Now, it's a very common device, and due to their abundance and lack of a specific style, as I said, many collectors neither recognize or bother with them. That is sad in a sense because even though they're abundant, they tell a crucial part of the story of the Native American Indian in ancient America, and in regards to what I'm going to show you, ancient Michigan. It would seem that their abundance indicates just how important fishing was to sustain their lifestyle. It was an extremely important commodity to these people. Net sinkers are quite often side-notched, others are grooved around the middle, and to a lesser degree, some have a hole drilled in the center. Now, personally, in the collection I'm going to show you, I don't have any that have the holes drilled in the center, and I only, over the years, know of one that I found that was up on near Vanetton Creek in Oscoda, Michigan. But there seems to be an endless variety of shapes and sizes as well as materials, and because they have no true defined type styles, like arrowheads and pottery do, it's difficult to date them unless they're found with culturally diagnostic artifacts. Ones that can be fairly easily dated, like pottery and arrowheads. They can be fairly easily dated. But many are heavy and flat, and others are lightweight and flat. And it's believed, and sounds reasonable, that the flat shape was the best for settling the piece down to the bottom of the river or lake and anchoring it into the lake bed or riverbed, and holding fast so that it stayed in place, and it would keep the lines from tangling, and it would keep them where the Native American fishermen wanted them. Larger sinkers, which I'll show you in just a moment, are thought to have been anchor stones, though this is not proven. Actually, I have a number of them in my collection that I consider to be anchor stones, and I've seen one other that was found up at Billy McQuaig Park in Oscoda, Michigan by Bill Hamlin, and it resided for a long time in the collection of Jerry Wagner up there in Oscoda. And I'll point out when I'm showing you mine that the one is very, very similar to what was found up there in Oscoda, but was found here in Saginaw instead. Now, there have been found, as you know, caches of arrowheads for many, many years. But there have also been caches of net sinkers found, not as abundant, but every once in a while. And of course, these are near occupation sites, and usually found during archaeological excavations, not just something stumbled across like, you know, a collector might do out in the field. One example was found in the northeast, and it consisted of 70 plus net sinkers, suggesting that they were used on a single net. And the cache was found in dark soil at about 12 inches in diameter, and it appeared pasty and organic. And that would seem to indicate that they were buried with the net they were used on, and that net had rotted away, and it would affect the dirt around it that way. I showed you last week a picture of a small pot that I found up at my old Van Ent Creek site up in Oscoda, and I told you I found it in 16 pieces. Well, the soil in which I found that piece was just like this. It was pasty, it was black, it was organic, the residual of what that little pot probably had been used to cook or prepare. But some of the stones are also categorized as bolo stones. And I'd never thought of that as a possibility, at least on the ones that I found, but I can see where images I've looked at could be. You see, the bolo stone was oval shaped with grooves ground into it, or notches, and were used to entangle the feet of small game animals. Round or oval stones were with pecked grooves around the middle are abundant finds, and they are identified as either net sinkers or bolo stones. Now I'd like to share with you some of the finds that I've made. I think that you'll find them interesting, and then I'll be back with you after that for just a moment to talk about next week's show. Here are 6 net weights. Let me pan out a little bit more if I can. 6 net weights that normally probably would be overlooked. And in fact, some of these I misidentified that I'm going to show you until I did a little more study. This particular one, as you can see, has a groove across the center. Actually, is made by taking stone off from it by hitting it with another stone, but it's got a notch here, would have been tied onto a net or line, and it would have helped sink that down into the water. This one is made out of granite. This one is made out of, I'm not sure the type of stone. This one is made out of granite, and it is grooved around the center on one side only, but that center groove right here allowed for easy attachment again to the net cord. Neat piece, which is kind of almost like a very, very crude plumb bob type style, but it would the cordage would have been attached around here, and then it would serve its purpose in the water. This one, a little bit larger, it's made out of limestone, and it has a notch here, slight notch here, crude notch there, and then you see here is a area deeper than this, so that the line was attached around it, and again used for a net weight. Here is another piece, grooved in the center, very dramatically grooved actually, grooved in the center, and attached again to the net. The other side, I'm sorry, has the residue of some glue on it. It was attached into a collection box of mine at one time, but it was grooved around. So it was full grooved around the piece. This, just another style. This one not as actually well defined as the other ones I just showed you, but again, effective nonetheless. Now let's move on to. Alright, here's another selection of 6, and you'll notice the commonality with the ones that I just showed you. All of them have either notching or a groove through the center for attachment. Again, a variety of materials here. This one is a heavy stone. I'm not sure the type of stone it is, but it's kind of got a greenish cast to it, grooved here. This one, a similar type stone. Again, grooved around the center. This one is I'm not sure, this is a lighter weight stone, and it almost appears to have a fossil right there in it. But again, notched on both sides for use. This one, I hope you can see the color well, because this is a greenish type stone, something like a serpentine or a stone of that nature, grooved through the center on one side only. And then this one, which I've heard people take pieces like this and mistake them for a tomahawk form, because it's notched here, here, and it could have been attached to a handle easily. This backside, you can see where it was worked to take material off, but in fact it is not a tomahawk, unfortunately. It is a net sinker. When I say unfortunately, I didn't really mean that, because it's just as important as a tomahawk artifact would be. And then we have this one here, which is very similar in design, as you can see, notched on both sides, and again, it could be misinterpreted as a small hatchet woodworking device. So this lot is a lot of 6 more. I'll show you a couple more here in just one moment. Here we have 2 more small net sinkers. Both are unique to me. So let's start with this one, with this Rothman. This is a very lovely waxy gray chert. The material would make a gorgeous arrowhead. And as you can see, it's notched here and slightly notched here for the attachment we have talked about to a line. But I don't know if the camera's picking up the beauty of this chert or flint. To me, it's absolutely an extraordinary piece. It's got such a nice smooth feel to it that it's one that I actually just like to sometimes hold. Now this one is a fairly lightweight stone. And people have said to me, "Oh wow, that was the start of an arrowhead, wasn't it?" And I have to disappointingly reply to them, no, it wasn't. It has a basic shape like that, but as you can see, it's notched here, and actually the man that made it in ancient times may have had a little bit of knowledge of what moves through the water the best. A flat stone, say, this isn't one, but a flat stone, say this, which would sink down good too, or one that is somewhat pointed that would sink down maybe faster. It's profound on both sides. The notching is actually a little more profound on this side, and so that's just a really nice a net weight. I don't think the thought of an arrowhead was in the picture at all when the ancient man produced these items. And why do I say ancient man? I'm not trying to be sexist at all, please understand that. I say ancient man because sexes had well-defined roles in these ancient cultures. It was the men's job usually to go out and secure the food commodities like game or fish or mussel, clams, and what have you. The women had just as important roles in the community, but they were different, and they were roles specifically practiced by women, and then these roles which were specifically practiced by men. And now I want to show you one of the more unique pieces in this particular collection. Okay, now we'll move on to some of the bigger pieces, ones that I consider anchor stones. I'm just putting my hand down here as a size comparison. This piece it was just a stone that they picked up, obviously, looked to them like it would suit the purpose, and they put a groove in it right here by abrading it with another stone, rubbing another stone against it until they got that slight groove that the cordage could be wrapped around and tied around. There was nothing done on this side. The marks you see here, I believe, are plow marks. I believe that's a plow mark because they're sharp and well cut, but there is no doubt in my mind that this was purposely grooved in by abrading it with another stone. Now let's move up that's probably about 3 pounds. Move up the scale a little bit here. This one I'd say is about 8 pounds. This is granite, weathered granite. It has a groove abraded in here. I believe that probably would have been more well pronounced at the time that it was actually produced, but the granite shows a lot of weathering. I don't know if I said or not, but I believe that's about 8 pounds. Again, it's a fairly good size. On the opposite side, there are no marks of modification, grinding, or anything of that nature. Just on this side and right here, and it's not as pronounced as on the one that I last showed you, again because of the fact that it was has weathered over the years. And then finally, the biggest one, I believe this is probably 10 to 12 pounds, and I think it displays better this way because this is the end that would have sunk down to the bottom, but it's notched here, as you can see, and it's notched here, as you can see, and a cordage again would have been wrapped around it. You flip that baby over, turn it back this way, you can only see the one notch when you flip it over, and that's over here where they actually took off a chunk of stone, a fairly good sized chunk of stone, to make that notch. This piece I found near the Saginaw River in a flower garden, and the people that had the flower garden, I asked them if I could have it if I replaced it with a stone of similar size but prettier, and they said, oh sure, you don't even have to replace it if you don't want to. And so they gave me that stone. I did replace it. I saw one other very similar to this, as I mentioned in the intro, that came from Oscoda, Michigan, at the Billy McQuaig Park, which is a sports park, baseball and such. They're in Oscoda, Sauble area, found by Bill Hamlin many years ago now. Beautiful piece, really, and would have been perfect for the use. So that is the last piece that I am going to show you on this. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at some really interesting artifacts. And the next time that you go out along the waterways, even if you're not looking particularly for artifacts, arrowheads and such, you'll be able to spot these and understand that they are as significant as a beautiful a turkey tail arrow point or a nicely decorated shard of pottery. Next week, I have a number of ideas for what I'm going to do, and I have not firmly decided yet. So I think I'm going to just let next week be a surprise, and I hope that you'll join me. I want to let you know that I thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. You know, many of you have become like friends, and I love all of you. Our world is a crazy place right now, and our nation is a crazy place right now. But I pray that you stay safe, and that the love of God will fill your life. I'll see you next week. God bless.